episode called The Doctor They in Love involves the dynamics of a show called Grey's Anatomy that follows the lives of a surgical intern, residents, and attendings at a fictional hospital where they perform surgeries, they have intense cases, and some love drama between the characters too. Hi, my name is Camila, and I'm in my senior year at UCAMI, where I study translation and interpretation. And I have here with me my cousin Sofía. She will be my co-host on this podcast.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm also a student, but I'm studying medicine, and it's kind of ironic as well as we'll be discussing a show about doctors. And I will join her on this journey that is about this incredible show called Grey's Anatomy. We'll learn lots of medical terms as well.
So, for starters, to kind of like draw a scenario on your head, we have the main character of the show called Meredith Grey. Clearly, the show is built mostly around her life and what happens at the hospital she works at.
And throughout 5 seasons, she and other really important characters are interns because they have just graduated from medical school and have to start their residency. These interns are Alex Guerrero, Christina Young, George O'Malley, and Isabel Izzy Stevens. Izzy is like the pretty one, the one that was model and decided to become a doctor. Alex is the problematic one, George is the sad puppy one, and then Christina and Meredith, who become best friends later in the first glimpse of the episode. The show starts with a kind of dramatic phrase said by Meredith, and I quote, "The game. They say a person either has what it takes to play it or they don't." And they start to get to know the playing field and, of course, each other.
So that was just to give you an introduction. But going back to the first scenes of the episode, we have Meredith and Derek Shepherd. They meet at a bar and then went back to her place and he just says goodbye to her with a kiss. And of course, he introduces himself because they don't do that when they are at the bar. But plot twist, soon after that, she finds out that he's a doctor and works at the same hospital where she has to begin her internship.
And then there's like a scene cut, and Meredith already is at Seattle Grace Hospital with all the interns. They are in an operating room, or OR as they call it.
There, they are given a motivational speech by the chief of surgery called Richard Weber. And I quote, and it goes like this: "Each of you come here hopeful, one inning on the game. A month ago, you were in med school being taught by doctors. Today, you are the doctors. The 7 years you spend here will be the best and worst of your life. You'll be pushed to the breaking point. Look around you, say hello to your competition. Each of you will switch to an easier specialty. 5 of you will crack under pressure. 3 of you will be asked to leave. This is your study line. This is your arena. How will you play? That's up to you." They have a 48-hour shift where they have to work non-stop until the end of it.
During the whole episode, all of them get to do the work they've been assigned to by the residents. Then we have the moment where Meredith finds out that the man he had a date with was now her voice in the case she was in. And you ask yourself, why is that? Well, because the attending have nothing to do with the specialty needed, and that is where Derek, or Dr. Shepard, steps in. As the case involved a patient called Katie Bryce, who happens to have seizures, and Dr. Shepard is the head of neurosurgery.
Later on in this episode, one of the interns is picked by the attending on call, known as Preston Burke, chief of cardiothoracic surgery, to do solo surgery without never having tried that on humans. Because it is the only way they will learn. So George is picked to perform an appendectomy and messes it up in another more technical words, he punctures the patient's spleen and becomes what they call a Doctor 007, which means he has the license to kill or to state when a person has deceased.
Appendectomy, o proceso de una apendicectomía, es una técnica quirúrgica utilizada para la extracción de lo que nosotros normalmente conocemos como el apéndice, ¿sí? Que es una pequeña saliente del tubo digestivo y se hace este proceso para poder quitarla o sacarla. Well, going back to Bryce's case, Meredith runs into Katie's room where she is shocked to see Katie having severe multiple seizures. Dr. Shepard comes into the room to help her treat the patient, but then they come to the conclusion that they don't know why Katie is having those seizures, so she is a ticking clock. So he decides to put the interns to work, which means that the intern who finds out the cause will get to scrubbing during the advanced surgery. Now, seizures o convulsiones son cambios en la actividad eléctrica del cerebro. Generalmente las convulsiones no son para preocuparse, a menos de que son consideradas una emergencia médica cuando duran más de 5 minutos. Meredith and Christina decide to team up so they have a 50-50% chance to scrub in for the surgery. They figure it out that she has a tiny aneurysm because she once fell doing a rhythmic gymnastic exercise, and that could cause an aneurysm. Un aneurisma es justamente la dilatación de la pared de un vaso cardíaco. En este caso se lo conoce como aneurisma cerebral porque es la dilatación de uno de los vasos del cerebro.
Meredith gets chosen to scrub in with Dr. Shepard, but not because they have been on a date, but because he says she's really smart and she did figure out something he couldn't, and because Meredith was Katie's doctor, and on her first day at work, she helped save her life. But the episode ends with Meredith later leaving the hospital with Christina, Izzy, and George, and even later she goes up the steps of a house through the rain. She tells a woman that she won't be selling her house anymore, that she will get some roommates, and that her fellow interns are really great. The woman asks Meredith if she is her doctor, but Meredith says no, that she is a doctor. The woman asks Meredith her name, and Meredith tells her. The woman then proceeds to tell Meredith that she thinks she was a doctor, and Meredith smiles and tells her she was. The woman, of course, is Alice Gray, and she has Alzheimer's, and of course, is Meredith's mom. And that was the end of the first episode and introduction of this famous show. And we're back with another of my favorite and most emotional episodes of Grey's Anatomy called Invest in Love. And you'll soon find out why I describe it as emotional.
You know what's interesting about Grey's Anatomy episode titles? Is that they use song names for every episode title. That's amazing if you ask me.
Wow!
Well, Sophie, I didn't know that, but thank you for telling me. So without further ado, let's get back to what concerns us today.
To give you a little background information so that you don't get lost in the middle of it, as it is already season 6, episode 8. The story is a little bit different by now, but please don't panic. We'll fill you up in a second. Just wait. Meredith and Derek that are now a couple live together at Meredith's place. All the interns are now residents, but one of them, Izzy Stevens, meaning the pretty one or the model one, is not part of the show anymore, as she got fired from the hospital because of a money shortage, and a merger with another hospital called Mercy West.
Also, let's not forget the new characters Kelly Torres, who's an orthopedic surgeon, and Arizona Robbins, who's a pediatric surgeon.
And there are some new residents such as Charles Percy and Reed Adamson.
Now we can start.
At the beginning of the episode, Derek and Meredith are sleeping when Derek's pager goes off. Meredith grabs it and hands it to him. Derek looks at it, kisses Meredith on the shoulder, and gets out.
We see Arizona giving a speech about how she runs her Pete's ward differently from how they might be used to. She says, and I quote, "It's not general surgery in miniature. They are the tiny humans. They believe in magic, they play pretend, there's fairy dust in their IV bags. They are more resilient than adults. Pete's has miracles and magic."
She then leads the doctor into the ward, where 10-year-old Wallace Anderson is examining a patient called Hilary Boyd. Callie asks Christina to present the case. Callie says she'd like to see how Hilary fares before she goes back to repair another fracture. Arizona asks for the proper dose of a medication and then has Wallace do the math to figure out the proper dose for Hilary. That's when Wallace presents his own case. He has short-gut syndrome and has been in the hospital for 7 months, in and out for the past 2 years. Percy continues that he's had 15 intestinal surgeries to date plus a bowel lengthening procedure, which helped, but now he's on a TPN or total parenteral nutrition, which is a special formula given through a vein that provides most of the nutrients the body needs. Short-gut syndrome o síndrome del intestino corto es una alteración de la absorción de los nutrientes en el intestino. Generalmente suele estar acompañada de una resección quirúrgica del intestino. Cuando decimos resección quirúrgica nos referimos a un procedimiento quirúrgico en donde se corta, o sea, se extrae la totalidad del órgano o una parte de él. La técnica de alargamiento intestinal o bowel lengthening procedure es también otra técnica quirúrgica en donde lo que se hace es separar el intestino previamente dilatado en dos, se lo junta y es la técnica más segura para tratar el síndrome del intestino corto y lo que hace es restablecer la correcta absorción de nutrientes.
The boy's father requests a meeting with Richard Weber and a member of the board, and they want Arizona there as well. And then his mother, Bethany, explains that they didn't believe his son would live to the age of 10. But then the father, Paul, continues that they'd like to offer the hospital PEDS program $25 million, have to go to research to find a cure for Wallace's condition, and have to the hospital itself.
Wow!
We also have the situation where Callie makes breakfast as Lexi comments that it's the best birthday gift ever. Callie is confused because she didn't know it was Arizona's birthday. Arizona says that birthdays are just like any other day. She doesn't like or celebrate them. But $25 million is worth celebrating. Callie believes Arizona's downplaying it and says she has to do something for Arizona's birthday.
Arizona then enters Wallace's room. He had a rough night and he's barely awake. He still wants to go on rounds, but Arizona tells him to rest. He can go for evening rounds instead. Bethany says that he listens to Arizona better than to her. Wallace tells his mom that Dr. Robbins is a doctor and she's just a mom. Bethany says she'll do what moms do best. He settles in and she chants, Bad dreams go away. Good dreams are here to stay. 3 times.
Arizona doesn't believe he'd make it through another surgery, but with the bowel obstruction, he won't live much longer. If he made it through the surgery, it might give him a few more months. A bowel obstruction o una obstrucción intestinal es justamente, como su nombre lo indica, un bloqueo en el tubo digestivo en la porción terminal, en este caso correspondiente a los intestinos, en donde las heces no pueden seguir su camino y no pueden salir del intestino. Arizona started overeating Wallace, who is unstable. They say he's in a septic shock because he wasn't stable enough to undergo surgery, just like she said. Richard, the chief, offers to help, but she says that with him standing there, she feels like she's operating on a stack of $20 million. And she needs to be invested in Wallace, not the money, so she kicks him out of the OR. Sepsis shock o shock séptico es un síndrome clínico de disfunción de los órganos, es potencialmente letal y es causada por una respuesta desregulada a la infección. Generalmente hay una reducción crítica de la perfusión tisular, puede haber una insuficiencia aguda multiorgánica en donde se afectan los pulmones, los riñones y el hígado. El tratamiento de esto consiste en una restitución agresiva de líquidos, administración de antibióticos, resección quirúrgica de los tejidos, que como ya dijimos, la resección era la eliminación parcial o total de los tejidos infectados o necróticos, y drenaje del pus.
Arizona just shakes her head, indicating that Wallace didn't make it. Richard offers to let the parents know that she did everything she could. Arizona comes home to Callis and finds a surprise body waiting for her. She bursts into tears at the sight of everybody and leaves without saying a word. Callie grabs her keys and goes after her. She of course apologizes, and Arizona tells her that Wallace died and he was supposed to be turning 11 today, but now he's in the morgue.
As the Andersons are packing up Wallace's room, Arizona comes to the door. Bethany tells Arizona it doesn't feel real. Arizona asks her if she'd like to see Wallace, so she takes the Anderson into the morgue. Bethany starts to chant to banish his bad dreams, but she starts crying and can't continue, so Arizona does it for her and says the magical words, bad dreams go away. Good dreams here to stay. Paul, Wallace's father, tells Larry and Richard that Arizona is the reason why they're still be giving the hospital the $25 million donation.
And that was the end of the episode. Please try to recover yourself because the next and final one will make you sweat and most likely cry. But remember, that's the beauty of this incredible show. Welcome back everyone for the last but not least important episode of the show called Flight.
Well, let's do another little recap. We are now at the finale of Season 8. We must say it is the most relevant episode of all and the hardest one to watch.
The episode starts with the speech of Richard Webber to the new class of interns from the very first episode. But this time, it's interrupted by scenes of the woods, the crash plane, and the surgeons who were on the plane. Meredith is lying on the ground in the woods, looking at the trees and the sky, but suddenly Christina appears in her sight, urging her to get up. Christina grabs her arm and pulls her back up while clearly being in pain. In the background, Arizona keeps on screaming. Meredith sees their pilot Jerry sitting on his seat in the plane, Mark trying to get up, and Arizona lying on the ground next to the plane. She suddenly notices there's a sharp piece of metal stuck in her leg. While she pulls it out, she asks how long she's been out.
Christina says she doesn't know, mumbling that she lost her shoe. Meredith ties a piece of clothing around her leg. Meredith gets up asking where Derek and Lexi are, but Christina is too busy with her lost shoe to answer.
As Meredith asks what happened, Christina says, "The plane crashed. That's what happened. We're on a plane and it crashed. Plane crash."
Meredith once again asks where Derek is, and Christina answers saying he fell from the side of the plane when they hit the trees and that the back of the plane came off. Lexi was in the back of the plane, Meredith remembers.
Then they suddenly hear a banging sound. Meredith, Christina, and Mark leave the front of the plane to go look at who's making the sound. That's when they arrive at the back of the plane. They see an arm clanging at seatbelt latch against the plane's metal frame, and Mark recognizes the arm because it was Lexi's. She's completely crushed on the heart of the plane. Despite this, Mark tells Meredith and Christina she's awake and responsive. As they also didn't know about the whereabouts of Derek, Christina tells Meredith to go find him, and that she and Mark will stay with Lexi. At that moment, Mark also pops Christina's shoulder back in, as she was struggling with it.
We have Arizona at the front of the plane. She starts panicking when suddenly Jerry, the pilot, says he can't move. She tells him not to move, as he could injure himself more.
Somewhere in the woods, Derek wakes up. He sees his hand is stuck in a large piece of metal from the plane, so he picks up a stone with his free hand and uses it to release his stuck hand.
At the hospital in Seattle, an administrative assistant informs Owen he has a few messages, but Owen says to send them to the voicemail as there are multiple traumas coming, and that's when he makes a mistake that he doesn't know about, of course. Otherwise, he would have acted instantly.
Then we also have the part when the residents have a graduation dinner with the chief of the hospital, Richard Weber, before they choose if they are going to stay to work at Seattle Grace, Mercy West, or if they are going anywhere else to start their fellowship.
Back at the woods, Mark and Christina, whose arm is now in a sling, try to lift up the piece of the plane that's lying on top of Lexi, but they don't succeed in doing so. Then Mark urges Christina to get fluids and oxygen tanks from the plane. She hesitates, as both she and Lexi realize it won't help because she's in the worst state possible.
Arizona tells Christina that Jerry needs a C-spine stabilization, but she finds a flare gun instead. Before she leaves with bottles of water that she found between the plane supplies, Jerry asks her about his paralyzed legs. So she grabs a pen, sticks it in his leg to show he doesn't feel a thing. A C-spine stabilization,
o una estabilización de la columna cervical, es un procedimiento que se aplica universalmente a las víctimas del trauma por los profesionales prehospitalarios, donde se coloca un collarín cervical. Si se acuesta a la víctima en una superficie dura, se le coloca este collarín junto a dos masas laterales que sirven para evitar los movimientos de la columna y evitar el deterioro de las lesiones de la médula. Sin embargo, su aplicación no está exenta de riesgos y en algunos casos no está indicada porque puede, por ejemplo, la apertura bucal puede ser comprometida, puede causar una restricción respiratoria, entre otras cosas. While Mark is lying next to Lexi and saying Christina will be back soon, she realizes she's dying. She asks him to hold her hand. He refuses, saying she won't die. She can't, because he loves her, and he says that they are meant to be. That she also needs to stay alive to get married, to become a great surgeon, and to have kids together. Meant to be, she repeats after him, after which she sadly passes away. Only seconds later, Meredith and Christina arrive and realize Lexi has died. Meredith starts crying hysterically, as her sister clearly died and she wasn't there to say goodbye to her.
As Meredith and Christina are looking for Derek together, Christina's questioning how bad things keep happening to them, saying she lived Seattle Gray's mercy death. Meredith starts freaking out, saying both her sister and husband have died in the woods and that they'll probably die too. But even though everything is going terribly wrong, Christina urges her to keep it together so they make it out alive. Meredith, suffering from PTSD, which stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, tells Christina she's still her person. Suddenly, they see Derek coming towards them, holding his bleeding hand with his other hand. He's alive!
After that, we see Christina looking through the stuff in the front of the plane. I found it! She suddenly screamed. I found my shoe! Out of shock and trauma.
At the back of the plane, Meredith is pouring some kind of fluid onto Derek's hand. Christina comes over with a suitcase in which she finds safety pin. Derek instructs Meredith to use safety pin to close the wound, put a piece of clothing on top of it and tape it.
Christina finds matches to build the fire. Then she yells at Mark, who's still just sitting there with his eyes closed, holding Lexi's hand, to help her build a fire. She shakes Mark and then notices he's really weak and that he's not responding, so she lays him on the ground and rips open his shirt, revealing there's something really wrong with his chest. She then listens to Mark breathing, diagnosing him with a tamponade, which is a compression of the heart by an accumulation of fluid in the pericardial sac. She says she's only 70% sure, but that she'll need an ultrasound to be completely sure. That of course she wasn't able to do, as they were in the woods. She also says Mark's heart will stop if they don't drain the pericardial sac to relieve the pressure.
Pericardial sac
o pericardio es una de las tres serosas de nuestro organismo, o como a mí me gusta llamarlo, una de las tres P, ya que tenemos tres membranas similares, pericardio, pleura y peritoneo. En el caso del pericardio es una membrana serosa que funciona como una bolsita que va a recubrir a nuestro corazón. Comprende dos hojas y entre ambas se establece la cavidad pericárdica, que es la que en este caso se llenó de líquido. Se ubica dentro de la cavidad torácica, por encima del diafragma, entre medio de los pulmones y contiene en su interior al corazón. Derek says they'll need an 18-gauge spinal needle to do so, which they replace with a tube in a bottle from the suitcase. Then Meredith disinfects it with a spray and cuts Mark's chest and asks for the needle to perform the drain. After that, Mark stabilizes.
Jerry suddenly hears something. Chopper! He screams. They all look up and start screaming. Meredith tries to fire the flare gun, but nothing happens. They hear the helicopter sound fading as they slowly start to lose hope of ever being found.
Meanwhile, in the residence' dressing room, Jackson and April are getting ready for the residence' dinner. Jackson tells her he chose Tulane's fellowship. That's good for you, she says. Then they compliment each other's outfit and leave for dinner together.
In the woods, Jerry tells Derek the transmitter probably got damaged in the crash, so no one knows where they are. Christina assures her that Owen, her boyfriend and also chief of surgery of the hospital, will find out that they are missing and send out someone.
In the conference room, after a long day of work, Owen is listening to the messages on his voicemail. The first message is from a doctor in Boise, where the surgeons were supposed to land to perform a complicated surgery, to check if the people he sent were to arrive today. When the second message of the same doctors tells him there's still no word from his surgeons and that she'll check with the airport to see if the weather held them up, Owen starts to get worried about their whereabouts.
At the dinner, Richard asks Alex if he heard anything from Christina or Meredith, but the answer is negative. He takes his glass, ready to share a secret with April, Jackson, and Alex that will help them to get through the challenges that lie ahead. When he sees the empty chairs, he decides to wait a little longer until Christina and Meredith join them. So the episode ends with a third message that says the doctors at Boise are starting to get a little concerned, and Owen too realizes something's wrong. Meredith, Christina, and Derek are sitting next to a small fire. Meredith falls asleep, while Christina realizes there's only one match left. The fire is immediately blown out by the wind. Meredith takes some gum and shares it with Christina. They lean against each other and sigh.
So, as not to leave you that numb and maybe heartbroken for them, we can tell you that most of them survived this plane crash. Of course, some with scars and traumas, but to calm you a little bit, the ones that survived recovered just fine.
And that's the end of this glimpse of this incredible show that is Grey's Anatomy. So if you are interested, you can watch it at www.starplus.com, where you have the full show. Well, if you're interested to know why we've chosen this show, well, we've chosen these 3 episodes to tell you a little bit about its story because it really portrays the essence of the show and how emotional and difficult it is to have a hospital as a work environment in which you'll spend most of your residency. Please do not forget to follow my co-host Sofía at Sofía Cabrera Rua and me at Camila Staciuk on Instagram for more content. And of course, our university's Instagram profile at UCAMI Official and all its platforms. Thanks for listening to all 5 episodes, if you have, of this podcast called Millennial Rhapsodies. This podcast was created by Staciuk Camila and Sofía Cabrera. It was produced and recorded by Staciuk Camila and Sofía Cabrera, researched by Staciuk Camila, and edited by Staciuk Camila. Call the Doctor They Are in Love is a product of UCAMI.